Understatement to say that we dodged a bit of a bullet this last election with Kamala Harris not being the president of the United States. But we dodged another bullet too with the running mate, Tim Walz. Minnesota is falling apart. But the great Harmeet Dhillon, head of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, just announced something that is maybe finally going to set things right in the Gopher State. Tim Walz should be quaking in his flip-flops, or are they Birkenstocks, knowing that Harmeet Dhillon and the DOJ are going to be coming down his throat. I'm going to share all that good news for you in just a second. But first, take a look at some of the stories coming out of Minnesota. You thought DEI was dead now in our government? Well, not in the state of Minnesota. Look at this. The Department of Human Services in Minnesota has got a policy now drawing attention to the state's explicitly racist hiring policies. That's right. Lots of racists in Minnesota under Tim Walz, apparently. They're updating its hiring justification policy, which requires it to justify whenever it hires a non-underrepresented candidate for a job where underrepresentation is said to exist. Let's cut through the BS and the buzzwords here, and let's just say what it is. If you hire a white person, you have to explain yourself in the state of Minnesota. Hey, we just hired this guy. Oh, yeah, he looks kind of white. Explain yourself. Defend your actions. What the hell do you think you're doing? That's Tim Walz's Minnesota. You think I'm overstating the case? Nope. Here's how Liz Collin, an investigative reporter, broke it down here for Alpha News. Hiring justification policy at DHS goes into effect next month. Quoting now from the policy, hiring supervisors must provide a hiring justification when seeking to hire a non-represented candidate prior to an offer of employment being made. This is the policy. And it says employees may be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination for failure to comply with these policies. Hey, we finally found a justification for firing a government employee that the Democrats will get behind. If you hire a white person without our permission, you're out of here. Elon Musk should have tried that with the DOJ initiative at the federal level. Furthermore, protected groups, the underrepresented, include females, persons with disabilities, members of the following minorities: Black, Hispanic, Asian, or Pacific Islander, and American Indian or Alaskan Native. I'm actually shocked that gender identity was not included in this. It seems kind of racist to have a policy like that that specifically says if you hire this type of person and you don't hire that type of person, you'll be fired. That's not the only thing happening in Minnesota, by the way. This is the HR director at the Division of Pollution Control. They have a pollution control agency in Minnesota. That's hilarious. HR director Vonnie Phillips called an Alpha News reporter a effing rotten B word from his official state email. Here, take a look. From Vonnie Phillips, MPCA, this was a request for comment on the racist allegations and racist social media posts. So in other words, there were allegations that this guy, Vonnie Phillips, had been posting racist stuff on social media. And a reporter for Alpha News says, hey, can you comment on this? And his response, hey, you can't make it up. Hey, sir, we've heard that you've been quoting racist and offensive things on your social media. We're going to be writing a story about it. We want to give you an opportunity to comment. Do you have any comment for us? Yeah, I got a comment for you. Good luck. My Facebook page is within the protected concerted activity guidelines. Therefore, do what you want. Nowhere on my Facebook page lists my employer and the person, the gutless, worthless coward that reported me. The hell with them. Please tell them I said that. You, Jenna. Notice I did not use my work mail. Get rotten. I may want to consult with your legal counsel. Vonnie. It would have been great if he had said, love Vonnie. That is the head of human resources at a state agency under Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota. Now, if all of this sounds a little, I don't know, illegal, and discriminatory and bigoted and racist to you, you're not the only one. Harmeet Dhillon heads up the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, and she posted this. Civil Rights Division will not stand by while states impose hiring mandates that punish Americans for their race or sex. Title VII is not a suggestion, it's federal law, and we will enforce it. Federal law has long prohibited employment policies that discriminate based on race or sex. The Justice Department refuses to tolerate such conduct, and states invite investigation when they engage in biased hiring practices tied to protected characteristics. So said the Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dhillon, yesterday. And yes, the lawsuit will in fact be filed against the state of Minnesota and Governor Tim Walz for this. You see, up until now, you've been told that racial discrimination and bigotry in the name of diversity and inclusion was not only tolerable and permitted, but it was desired and it should be celebrated. Racism, to stop racism, is beautiful, we were told. Which, if it sounds completely demented and demonic and nonsensical, you're right, but it is a virtue of the political left in this country. To them, it makes perfect sense. But they lost the last election, and well, elections have consequences, and Minnesota's about to FO, if you know what I mean. Also from Alpha News, which, by the way, should win some kind of award for their coverage of Tim Walz's Minnesota and the warped ideology that is ruining that state. They have yet another story. Again, I want to remind you, the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, was Kamala Harris's pick and the Democrats' pick to be one heartbeat away from the presidency. In fact, there are some Democrats right now who think that he should be the nominee for president in 2028. Look at how his state is run. 11 illegal alien sex offenders arrested in Minneapolis, according to DHS. Governor Walz and his fellow sanctuary politicians are fighting to keep these sex offenders and other criminal illegal aliens in our country. Well, after all, they're the ones who pick our strawberries, apparently. You can't possibly go after them. 11 sex offenders arrested in Minneapolis. Let's hear a little bit more about this, because ICE has been very busy in Minnesota. They have to be, since they get no cooperation from state police or local police, thanks to Tim Walz and his sanctuary policies. This is from our colleague at Town Hall, Dustin Grage. Nearly 900 pounds of meth seized in Minneapolis. Guillermo Mercado Chaparro and Joel, how did he get that name? Casas Santiago were arrested on Monday, both having ties to a Mexican cartel. This is who Democrats are shielding with their sanctuary policies. That is 100% correct. Sanctuary is, in fact, giving sanctuary to the worst possible criminals. And they'll all scream bloody murder when ICE has to go into Guillermo Mercado Chaparro's neighborhood to apprehend him, because when they go into the house, there may be 20 other people there whose only crime was coming into our country illegally, which I want to remind you is a crime. And so then they'll get arrested. And then Tim Walz will go on television saying they arrested an abuela who was just there making tamales for the family. Yeah, well, what was Daddy and the family doing? Daddy had 900 pounds of meth. And that's what sanctuary policies give you. But believe it or not, that's not actually the most politically damaging story to come out of Minnesota this week with regard to Governor Tim Walz. Get a load of this one, as reported by the local NBC affiliate in Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Did you know it cost taxpayer money to prep Governor Tim Walz to testify before Congress a few weeks ago? $430,000 is the bill to be paid to outside lawyers who helped Governor Walz get ready for the congressional hearing on sanctuary cities that he was called to. That figure is maddening to some Republicans who want to know why taxpayers have to pay for Governor Walz's legal preparation when we have an attorney general's office on state payroll. The reason the Walz administration is giving is in the letter you can see on your screen. They say that the Minnesota Attorney General's office was providing initial legal counsel, then recommended to Governor Walz to get outside legal counsel to better prepare him for the specialized nature of the questions he was going to get at a congressional hearing. I did some digging today, and I found it's not unusual for politicians called to a congressional hearing like that to do what Walz did. The mayor of Boston did it. It cost her city's taxpayers $650,000. The mayor of Denver did it. It cost that city's taxpayers about $250,000. But let's get back to our state, our taxpayers, and our governor. A spokesman for the governor, for Governor Walz today, agreed it was a waste of money, but added, quote, Tom Emmer and Pete Stauber planned the spectacle knowing what it would cost and went through with it anyway, end quote. Do with all of that information as you wish.
Yeah, the Republicans made us spend that money on outside lawyers to prepare Tim Walz for testimony. And I do love that the rationale was, well, listen, Democrats in other Democrat-run cities and states did it. So, no big deal. Now, just in case you're wondering what the hell this is all about, you'll remember these hearings. We highlighted it here on the show. 3 governors were called to testify about their sanctuary policies, the rationale behind those laws, and how it affects public safety with regard to their states, as well as interacting with federal law enforcement officials in enforcing our federal immigration laws. The 3 individuals were J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Jabba the Hutt Pritzker, and then Kathy Hochul of New York. You remember there was a dramatic showdown between Hochul and Elise Stefanik, a congresswoman from New York who might be running for governor there. I hope she does. And then, of course, the aforementioned Tim Walz. Now, understand something. These are governors of states, and they were called to Congress to explain their state's policies that these governors either came up with or endorsed and celebrate and maintain as the policy of their state. So it's their policies, and they were asked to answer questions about their policies. As Dustin Grage points out, Tim Walz has held office in Minnesota, either at the state level or as a member of the House of Representatives, since 2007. That's 18 years. 6 terms in Congress, 2 terms as governor. And by the way, he ran on a national ticket as the running mate to be vice president of the United States. Yet he was not equipped to prepare for a congressional hearing about the very laws that he passed and the very policies he supports. So he needed to spend close to $500,000 of taxpayer dollars, not for the in-state counsel, but to hire outside lawyers to really brief him so he's prepared to defend his own policies. The best part is that even with close to $500,000 of legal preparation, this is how he performed at these hearings that he was so prepared for, thanks to the $500,000 in legal costs.
Work with law enforcement to enforce the law. In May 2020, looting, acts of violence, and arson occurred on your watch in Minneapolis after you refused to bring in the National Guard. Governor, your agenda is clear. Free healthcare, free college and driver's licenses for illegals while handcuffing law enforcement when they're trying to protect our citizens and their communities. If you think that's not a sanctuary state, you shouldn't be governor. By turning Minnesota into a magnet for illegals, you have opened up our communities to dangerous criminals, including known terrorists, gang members, murderers, and child predators. You have sent a resounding message that if you're a hardworking, law-abiding citizen of Minnesota, your safety and well-being are not the priorities of Tim Walz and his administration. But if you're coming to our state illegally, you're not only welcome with open arms, you're entitled to free stuff on the taxpayer's dime. This is absolutely disgraceful. Governor Walz, your sanctuary state agenda has been defined by your utter failure. You have failed to enforce the rule of law. You have failed to uphold our national sovereignty. And most importantly, you have failed the people of Minnesota. The time for radical sanctuary state policy, sir, is over. The voters made that clear last November when they elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. You remember him, don't you? Governor, the time for real leaders and real leadership is now. And with that, sir, actually, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record the governor's tweet that I referenced from May 23rd, 2018, which makes it clear his hatred for federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes.
Mr.
Chair
Chairman.
recognizes Mr. Mfume.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
All right. So now you may be thinking, well, that's not fair. Tim Walz didn't get a chance to respond to that. That was just Tom Emmer, Minnesota Republican, who was grandstanding and giving a speech. Okay, fine. How about when Tim Walz was asked to his face to explain a comment that he made when he referred to ICE agents as members of Donald Trump's Gestapo? Do you remember this?
A portion of today's testimony, and I'm going to begin with Governor Walz. Governor Walz, I thought that maybe your statement referencing ICE as Gestapo was an outlier statement, but now that Mr. Lynch has endorsed it, it appears that it could be some type of Democrat talking point. Governor, do you and other Democrat politicians understand why referencing ICE as Gestapo is offensive? I'm going to explain. The Department of Homeland Security is reporting that ICE agents are now experiencing a 413% rise in assaults. We've seen numerous videos of rioters obstructing and assaulting federal law enforcement after your remarks, including in Los Angeles. So, Governor, do you think that comments like that and rhetoric like that put ICE officers and other law enforcement in greater danger?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, any attack on law enforcement is unacceptable wherever it's at, whether it's state, local.
So you understand, and I've got limited time here. I want to highlight for the governors that real-world impact of the policies that you all continue to defend, even in your opening statements, have on American families.
All right, so he goes on to talk about that, but I'm sorry, I'm trying to scramble to find the video of it for you, because Walz then claimed that he never called ICE agents Gestapo. He was saying Trump treats them like they're his private Gestapo. See, but that, in fact, is a lie. Here, take a look.
What I said, Congressman, and I have a long history of supporting law enforcement, I said President Trump was using them as his modern-day Gestapo. Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets.
There you go. That's the lie right there. So $500,000 taxpayer money to prepare him to lie, and he didn't even lie well. That's Tim Walz running Minnesota. Now you may be saying, well, listen, that's not fair. You know, I'm sure that Tim Walz is good at thinking on his feet on other issues, and I'm sure that legal expense really did a good thing for Tim Walz to inform him about whatever questions that he may be asked. Because what if somebody throws him a curveball about something that maybe, had nothing to do with the sanctuary policies? Oh, okay, let's take a look at that. Nancy Mace of South Carolina did, in fact, ask him a question about another policy in Minnesota that had nothing to do with sanctuary policies. It had to do with the gender ideology of the state of Minnesota. Let's see how that went for Tim Walz.
What is a woman? What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, that's money well spent, Minnesota. Money very well spent. Does not understand the question. What is a woman? We'll let Dustin Grage kind of close things out here to bring it all in perspective, because apparently, according to the new book written by the 2024 election, Kamala Harris decided to go with her gut to select Tim Walz as her running mate after the overly ambitious Josh Shapiro left a bad impression. That's according to the new book. And as Dustin points out, the decision to pick Tim Walz as Kamala Harris's running mate came down to a gut feeling, because Shapiro and Kelly, the senator from Arizona, chose water while Walz chose Diet Mountain Dew in their final interview. She figured he'd help her connect with rural voters. You cannot make this up. You're right, Justin. And keep up the great work at Town Hall covering Minnesota. Yeah, we dodged a bullet all right. We dodged like a freaking Tomahawk missile with both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. The next question is, Minnesota, what the hell are you doing up there? Can you fix this, please? Can you do something? Because we would love to be rid of this guy on the political scene once and for all.